Back home, and Indigenous women need to be at the centre of designing solutions to domestic violence. That was the clear call from First Nations women at a major summit this week. Research shows First Nations women are 32 times more likely to be hospitalised and 11 times more likely to die from assault than other women.
Women from around the nation gathered at the online summit this week to again call on government, politicians, policymakers and service providers to listen to them and put them at the centre of designing solutions. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Social Justice Commissioner June Oscar chaired that summit and joins us now from Broome. Good morning, welcome to the program.
Good morning to you both.
Commissioner, what was your aim with this summit?
Well, it was to ensure that we included as very many people who are impacted upon by the need for protection, safety, and to be heard in a space that was safe and that could contribute to the design of policies and investments from government and others around how women want these services and programs to look like that would guarantee their safety where it matters for them. So it was critical to bring in a diverse group of Indigenous women and give them the space to inform each other and others who are making decisions around safety and protection.
We touched there in the intro about what were some of the broad outcomes. I wonder if you might expand upon what was called for by those at the summit.
Well, initially there was a delegate statement acknowledging that the process that they were engaging in included their voices, so they felt heard. And it was a diverse group of women from government, women who are working at the front line in community organisations, women who are researchers having decades of investigative work and building of cases to bring to the attention of decision makers how it is that women, particularly Indigenous women and their families, want to engage in these processes. So it also included women living with disabilities, representatives from the LGBTQI plus sectors, sister girls. And so it was important to include all of those voices in a safe space where they could hear each other, they could contribute, and more importantly, to have their voices heard by government to include in the design and development of the National Action Plan and the standalone First Nations Action Plan in terms of protecting First Nations women and children and families.
So what are the next steps for governments, politicians, policymakers as well?
Well, we understand that our country is in a process of designing the next National Action Plan. And last year at the Safety Summit, Indigenous women called for a standalone plan that focuses on the unique needs, the impacts and the lived experiences of Indigenous women in our country, and that a plan be developed that speaks to that reality, but that is designed by First Nations women in all of our diversity around the country. So whether we're from rural and urban centres or regional and remote and very remote areas, any plan to ensure and guarantee our safety has to have our input in its design.
And I wonder if there's a broader role for every Australian and for businesses and perhaps even the media, because I was particularly struck when there was quite a horrific murder in Alice Springs just a couple of months ago of an Aboriginal woman and baby, and it barely raised even a conversation nationally.
Well, that's the sad reality that we experience in this country, Dan, that there are many deaths of Indigenous women, but we don't know their names. We don't know who they are. They don't even appear on the radar of governments and policy makers. But, we do hear the response, and we see the response when it involves a non-Indigenous woman and her children. But yet this experience happens far too often across the country, and no one knows about it. And so there is no acknowledgement, no response in terms of, well, how do we provide the wraparound support and care and the prevention for women who are vulnerable to the unsafe spaces that far too many women and children experience and live within our country.
Why is it, Commissioner, that you think we don't know their names, and what needs to change?
I think it's very it's an important point, but I can say that these are the ways in which Indigenous women experience discrimination by systems, by governments, in all forms, and the way in which we do not value the experiences and the needs and aspirations of Indigenous peoples. And here, women cannot access the services that they need to be able to voice their solutions around keeping them safe. They're non-existent, these services in communities. And as I've travelled this country, it is far too common that I hear that the services for support are just not there.
Yeah, June Oscar, Commissioner for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Social Justice. Thank you for your time and your insights, and for, again, so powerfully speaking through these really difficult discussions.
Thank you, Dan.
And if this discussion has raised any issues for you, you can get help by calling the National Sexual Assault and Family Violence Counselling Helpline, 1800 RESPECT, which is 1800 737 732.